Hello, everyone. Hi. Welcome to our webinar today. My name is Carrie Cantrell, and I am a facilitator at Circles, and I'm going to be your moderator today and your host. So I'm going to start out by telling you a little bit about myself and our presenter today, Sarafina, and we're going to go from there and talk a little bit about logistics before we get started. So just to introduce myself a little bit, as I mentioned, I'm a facilitator here at Circles, and I'm also a social worker and a life coach. I have my own practice as a life coach, Carrie Cantrell Coaching, but really what I do outside of Circles is I help people with their emotional wealth, really helping them truly live a more meaningful and fulfilled, balanced life while overcoming all of that mind drama. Think about all those things that go through your head when you're dealing with relationships in your life, like romantic, friends, family, and really giving yourself a boost in the areas of confidence and self-worth. And I always like to say, I live in Phoenix. I got a couple fur animals, fur dogs, and I have a really creative soul. So that's just a little bit about me. And I want to introduce our presenter for today, too. She's one of my fellow Circles facilitators. Her name is Sarafina Arthur-Williams, and she is the CEO and founder of Intentional Simplicity LLC, a private practice focusing on wellness as a means of internal sustainability. She helps people gain an understanding of their purpose and identity while assisting them to integrate creativity within all aspects of their lives. Her goal is to help you become more intentional and make space for your authenticity within your business and your personal life through relational and scientific-based practices. I just love that so much. Welcome, Sarafina. Thank you so much for kind of being here with me today. I love hanging out with my fellow facilitators.
Thank you so much for having me, Carrie.
So just to kind of give you all an introduction to what we're doing here today, I imagine that if you are here watching this webinar with us, that means that you are experiencing or have experienced heartbreak. Me too. Don't worry, you're not alone. In a YouGov poll, 79% of people said they had experienced having their heart broken. That's nearly 261 million people who are dealing with heartbreak and who are unsure of how to heal. And think about it. A lot of that has to do with rebuilding trust. Sarafina is going to present today a number of solutions and help you rebuild trust again. But for those of you who don't know Circles, Circles is a leading program and platform for emotional support that ensures that no one is having to overcome all these challenges in life alone. And really, we're built on the core principle that in order to overcome life's challenges, you need to be heard. You need to be supported by people who actually understand what you're going through. So here at Circles, we match people going through all of these things in life with other people who might be going through similar experiences. It might be loss of a loved one, parenting issues, divorce, and every circle is led by mental health professionals just like me and Sarafina. But there in the circle, you'll be with other people who are experiencing the same things as you and experiencing a safe place to chat, have a weekly video session, and support each other through the healing process. Everyone who has attended these events like this webinar, get a special treat from Circles and most importantly, actionable tips that help you feel better starting today. So hang in there. I hope you all enjoy this webinar. But one more thing before I officially get started, just want to mention a few logistical things. This is a webinar, meaning that there is only one way, video and audio. So you can see us and you can hear us, but we can't see you or hear you. But Sarafina and I were just chatting about how we really want to interact with you today. So we are going to answer your questions. There's a box where you can type your thoughts, you can type your questions, and we're going to even have a place throughout this webinar for you to share what you're thinking and feeling about the information as we go through. So you can submit all of those thoughts and questions in the chat box. It is completely private. Only I can see them, and I may even share some of that information as we go through so that we can respond to you. So go ahead and submit them. And on that note, let's go ahead and get started. Are you ready, Sarafina?
All right, guys. Thanks so much for having me, and wonderful introduction, by the way. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Our webinar today is really focusing on how to trust again after a heartbreak. Okay, so first and foremost, it's really important that we have our ground rules. And I gave you guys these ground rules so that you have a better perspective going into what we're going to be talking about today. This is very similar to gearing up before a game. So first things first, our goal is to be respectful of others' thoughts, emotions, and feelings. This is really important because we all come from different perspectives, and this allows us to see how our world is shaped. It's not only through our lens. Have an open mind and a soft heart. Having an open mind allows you to receive the information that I'll be sharing with you, and a soft heart allows you to experience it without it triggering you in a harmful way. Our goal is that you are conditioned to feel like you can have these difficult conversations without having a hard time. This isn't supposed to be difficult. Have a sense of internal humor. So if you know me, I love to laugh. A lot of the things that I do includes humor. So this allows us to give us a little buffer around the hard things that life is just guaranteed to give us. So giving yourself that internal humor softens that whole experience just a little bit. Make space for introspection and reflection. So if you aren't sure what introspection and reflection are, this is a wonderful time because we're going to offer you lots of tools to start journaling and exploring what that is you can do while you're learning about trust here. But this is really about you taking time outside of our webinar to really explore what's going on for you in this experience of heartache, while also knowing that you have a place to come back to, such as Circles, to really get your point heard and your voice to start establishing what you really want out of your life here. Next is to practice patience, kindness, and positive regard towards yourself and others. And this is so important as trust is such a hard experience for people. Giving yourself that patience, kindness, and positive regard allows you to fail. You know, it's okay if something doesn't go well because you can try again. Which leads me to our last experience, which is to give yourself permission to fail and learn as needed. Trust is a process of gathering data and then giving yourself the space to make grounded decisions. Once you're able to realize that with each moment you share your truth with someone, you're able to check whether or not they're trustworthy in your box in one area or not. That's all valuable information. So go ahead and allow yourself to be vulnerable. It's much easier to start to approach heartache in that way. So if you guys are ready, we're going to go ahead and we're going to move forward. All right, so for our first focus is vulnerability is trust. How do you trust again? This question can only be answered by exploring who we are at the core, right? Who are we as humans? And the most important thing we should know is that we're vulnerable. We have emotions. We have lots of different moods and feelings and experiences. And in that, we have to give room for these to show up and represent and have a sound and have a voice, because that's a means of us recognizing that we are humans and we're a part of that. The next is to connect with our humanity. And this is mainly because we all are experiencing this difficulty in trust. And the connection is humans. And so if you're realizing that this is a normal experience for us, it makes it much easier for you to feel as if you aren't alone. So please take up space in this world because you absolutely belong. You really do. And one of the most helpful things that you can do right now, if you aren't even sure where to start after a heartbreak, is to nurture your humanity. And these are the fundamentals of being a human, right? It requires that you offer yourself growth, health, and sustainability through a nourishing type of perspective, which could be like making yourself a good meal, going for a walk, spending time within your bed, regaining your energy, pursuing a creative activity that really inspires you to feel good about what you're doing. So how can you really soothe and ease this feeling? Okay, and so keep this framework in your mind as we move through this webinar so that you can see how am I actually going to implement the things that we're learning here today. All right, so perfect time. We're going to have a mindfulness break. So if you want to take a few deep breaths, just check in with your body, check in with what you've got going on. Ask yourself, are you worthy of your love, of your trust, and of your own respect? When you sit with that idea, I hope that the idea of love comes from your inner feeling. And if you feel as if you are worthy of it, where is it driving from? Is it driving from other people? Is it driving from society? Is it driving from outside perspectives? Or is it coming from you, but you're not really sure? All of these are really a huge component for figuring out what was it that allowed me to trust someone. It requires you to trust yourself. And it also requires that we put a lot of intention within how we love ourselves. So moving forward, when I say trust, the first thing I'd love for you to think about is individual trust. Trust begins and ends with you. Nothing can move forward unless you have that feeling within yourself. And a heartbreak definitely feels as if it's just like running down, and your heart is as if you've given it away and you can't get it back. Your worth has now been taken and you're depleted and you're looking for something to yearn and attach to. But all that looking kind of drains your energy. And the goal is that the looking you do is internal. And that's where you're going to really find that good stuff there, which is the individual trust that you have with yourself. And so when I say trust begins and ends with you, we really start to explore how you view your trust. Okay, so what makes trust so difficult? People go through love abuse, social rejection, low self-esteem, past infidelity, abandonment, attachment, fears, all of these different things. And I'm sure if you're sitting here and it's resonating with you, it may feel very uncomfortable. It may feel as if your heart is at a core or as if you're not sure how to muster moving forward. I know a few examples that we talked about in one of my circles within our newly separated and divorced group actually is how a lot of our members have partners who have cheated on them or has past infidelity. And that experience of love has now impacted how they view love today, because that experience was not rooted in their intention and their view of trust for themselves. It was rooted in how someone else's trust of them can be more secure for who they are and their identity. However, attaching to those things makes it really difficult to see you, because we're now just fulfilling the expectations of the outer world. And a lot of these areas are not your fault, right? These are social connections that have made you feel this kind of way. And it really makes it unfortunate because we're looking for unique and dependable and healthy relationships that can make trust a little bit easier to hold. So I also like to think about the idea of, why should we trust people? What makes that important? What does that offer us? Why do we need to have that in our space, in our bodies? And trust allows you to believe that you can make the best decisions moving forward. So I'm going to move forward and we're going to see what it's like for us to decipher between what has been going on in your past relationships and what have you experienced in your current space. So, Carrie, when we talk about whether or not past relationships will impact our future space, what things do you think would come up for us? What would we have to really focus on there?
Well, I'm kind of reading all of the comments in the chat box so far, Serafina, and I think a lot of people are really resonating with what you're talking about so far. So I just want to touch on that first. A lot of people are, really asking the questions, how can I trust again? They're really noting, I had to do this, I had to do that because of my past relationship, because of my divorce. So I'm hearing a lot of them kind of think about those past relationships look like and what kind of events happened, what kind of trauma happened. And they're pulling from those experiences to kind of base their future trust.
Right.
Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in that, it gets really scary because what if that version of trust isn't the one that's most helpful to you right now? What if that
yeah.
version of trust hurts who you are? Is that in itself a good person or a good space to rest in? And trust has a lot to do with psychological safetyness. And psychological safetyness is knowing that you are allowed to show your full feeling self, your full being, your full authenticity without feeling like you have to mask or hide parts of your identity. And throughout this webinar, I like to break down the differences between a healthy version of trust and an unhealthy, like the presence of trust versus the lack of trust. And within those spaces, it's really uncomfortable because we don't really talk about these things. No one really shows up for these difficult conversations. And that's why it's really important to have a space to honor what it feels like after the heartbreak. There's a lot of resentment. I put in a lot of work in this relationship. Why am I now feeling like this? This person just gets to move forward with their life while I'm still experiencing what this was like. What does this mean for me when I have to now make all these decisions by myself? When I once put my trust in someone else to make these decisions for the well-being of me as well. So it's hard to hold you and also to hold the truth of the matter that there are a lot of different areas that we need to be focusing on, and trust cannot be all encompassing.
Yeah, no, I think you make a really great point, and I just want to share one of the comments that's come through. Bethany says, I tried dating again, but I don't even trust myself to make the right decision. And I think that kind of really resonates with some of the things that you're touching on.
Yeah, yeah. The lack of trust within ourselves is a common experience after a heartbreak. And one thing I would share with Bethany is that maybe there's a reason why you're feeling that way internally. Our intuition has a wonderful way of speaking to us. Unfortunately, we don't listen. But we have so many senses that allow us to tap into those. So maybe journaling, taking a mindfulness break like we're doing now, and really resonating with yourself. What's going on here? What's this been like for me? Why don't I feel like I can trust myself? And is the person in front of me even worth trusting? Those are all really good information. Those are all really good points to help you gather enough data to say whether or not you can make a good decision. And I think that's just a matter of taking a forced stop to just think about what's really happening here rather than just reacting. Yeah. Okay. We're going to go ahead and move forward. So, what is it like to trust or not to trust? Your feelings, your emotions, and intuition. So, this is very similar to what we were talking about earlier. There's an increase of fear, there's an increase of anxiety, there's an increase of doubt, and this usually is sprung by a triggering event. So, think about this. You are you just broke up out of your relationship and you're trying to step into this space, and your friends keep reminding you of past experiences you had with your ex, or someone else just encourages you to let it go or to not feel or to just shove it down and not make it a big deal. All of those are re-heightened because our amygdala, which is our emotional sensory regulation system, which is flooded with all the things that we are feeling in that time. And our lack of knowledge of those words or those emotions make us feel like we aren't in control of what's going on. And that lack of control leads to that fear and anxiety and that doubt and uncertainty. And so the way we can start to tap into these feelings and emotions and our intuition requires us to do a little bit of listening. What's really going on? What am I hearing? What may be happening for me in this time? And is my intuition steering me in a good direction, a direction that serves me, or is it putting me in a direction that I am comfortable in, which means a past experience that is familiar to my body and to my psyche. And these new patterns of trust are going to be uncomfortable, but there are reasons and there are post signs that are up for us so that it's not as hard for us to check into them. We must do the active listening, though, which is being more self aware of what's going on. So, what role does self trust play in trusting others? So, I said earlier, it requires that you trust yourself first. That's the first step before you take that next step into saying, I'm going to trust another person. And the reason why the self trust is so critical to this journey is because you have to nurture your identity again. You have to believe that the reality you created is not as hurtful as it is. We have to sort of shift the perspective, and usually it's because our expectations have been shattered that it makes it really hard for us to put our pieces back together. However, a breaking gives you an opportunity to start mending in areas that may have been full of cracks already. So we're looking to find things that can mend these spaces, which are sustainable boundaries, guiding principles, and morals. I love to say your non-negotiables. I'm not budging on this because it keeps me grounded. It keeps me together. So you really want to consider others in your life and the relationships that you have created. And I say this because it takes two to tango, right? And self-trust requires that you can give someone else the freedom to hold your vulnerability and be okay with it. And know that if they do fail in showing up for your trust, that you'll be able to allow them to learn and grow, learn and grow. But you also have the right to decide, how am I going to show up with those boundaries and limits? And lastly, self-trust plays a huge role in trusting others because you have to feel comfortable within your authentic being at all times. And that authentic being is that self space. And if you're not able to trust that version of you when you go out to these other spaces or within these other relationships, it makes it very uncomfortable for you to know whether or not people are talking about you. If people are, this is when I talk about social anxiety, it starts to increase. There's a lot of internal uncertainty, which makes it really hard for people to know whether or not they can value the space that you hold. What do you bring to the relationship of trust? These are great questions to start to think about. Okay, perfect timing. So we're going to go ahead and have another mindfulness break. And one of the questions we have here is, have you done an inventory of the emotions, triggers, and unhealthy behaviors that led to the heartbreak? So go ahead and take a few moments, sit with it for a bit.
We have some great questions coming up in the chat box, Sarafina. So I'm going to start with one from Valerie. Where do you start with learning to trust yourself? Like, what is the first step?
So the first step is knowing that you can fail. You may not be able to trust everything about yourself, but what areas can you trust? And so what I love to do is like a body scan of your life, right? We've got relationships, we've got your culture, we've got your spiritual life, we've got your career, we've got your environment, we've got your physical, we got your mental, like all parts of your life, your wellness. What areas are a lot more secure within your trust than others? And right now, for us, it would be the relationship is the area where we don't have the trust, but we have it in other parts. So let's say you feel really grounded in your career space. I know one of our clients were talking about this yesterday in group. Like, I feel like I got this career thing going down, but my relationship is still suffering. But I feel like I'm really good in my spirituality, but I'm not really tapping into my physical self. I don't have the trust that I can actually show up for these things. And that is having the self-efficacy that you can believe in yourself. I know Carrie and I believe in you guys, and this requires a lot of grace and compassion and awareness that you are trying to actively change. You're intentionally choosing a different behavior when a trigger or a past unhealthy behavior shows up. And these often no longer serve us. It's not like they're bad. They may have helped us in the past, but right now, it doesn't help us show up in a trustful way for ourselves. So, like, it's the first thing is first is to sit down and look at your life. What parts of your life do you trust? What parts of your life do you feel comfortable in? And relationships are an area that make it a little bit more difficult to trust because it requires another person. And that's why we say it starts with you first, because you now have that space to reflect on what you said, reflect on the behaviors that you've done, and your aim is to align your actions and your words with you. And so that you're able to be consistent with yourself. Okay?
Well, and I think you already started to kind of answer this next one, but Anton was kind of saying, I'm thinking that the only person I can trust is myself. And
Mm,
this is preventing me from taking the risk of trusting someone else again. And you started to kind of answer it there. You started to talk about like, it might be hard to do these other things. And you have to kind of build like one step at a time. Like, what is that first step of building the trust? And eventually you might, but you will get to trusting these other people. Can you just kind of give us a little bit more insight into that idea that, I might be struggling to trust myself, or maybe I'm the only one that I trust? And how can I really kind of build that trust with other people? Because I hear that a lot in my groups, that they're really struggling to trust another person. And I don't think that's only true for romantic relationships. They really start to only depend on themselves.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's a wonderful question, Anton. And the space to start is within healthy spaces, for example, like our circles groups, because these spaces are created for you to feel vulnerable enough, to feel safe enough to speak your truth. But if you don't have that environment, it is a little bit harder, but we have to start believing that if we give people small bits of information about ourselves, small bits of information, you can see whether or not they can hold that space. And what will happen is that the more information you share with them and the more information they share with you, you start to see what kind of relationship you guys built here. Is this someone that I can go to and talk about my boundaries in a way that's supportive of who I am? Is this someone that aligns with my values and can see that I am growing in this space? Is this someone that allows me to fail and try again? Is this someone that doesn't judge me or make me feel uncomfortable? And I promise you guys that there are people like that. There are healthy people who want to have dialogues that are trustworthy and safe. However, when we've been in spaces that are not trustworthy, we tend to attract that same energy. And so maybe we're stepping outside of our box now. What environments can we go to that are a little bit more safer? And as a Black woman, I love to be mindful of the cultural perspective of safetyness. Maybe you feel safe inside your house, but you don't still feel safe when you go outside because of law enforcement. Or maybe you don't feel safe because of the government's approach to whatever. These dimensions of trust don't only start and end with you, it's much bigger than that. And so, really think about it. Where is my safe space? Who do I trust? And can I trust them truly? And what does trust mean to me? And am I trying to shift someone else's perspective so that I can feel like I'm worthy of their trust? Or am I already worthy of my trust? And now am I stepping into opening that space for other people to be a part of my journey of trust? And that is, once again, those small little baby steps, teaspoons. And then they can get bigger and bigger and bigger. But these are your vulnerable experiences that you get to trust with other people. All right, so perfect timing, relational trust, trusting your circle. I just gave you guys a wonderful breakdown of what that looks like. Now let's break it down a little bit more. So, the lack of trust versus the presence of trust. So, the lack of trust is living in the past or the future Right? This is anxiety, I say, and depression. What that looks like is not really being in the present moment. There's a lack of trust often when there's relational trauma. So childhood experiences of trauma are really painful relationships at work, painful relationships within friendships, painful relationships within other dynamics. Infidelity, which is cheating and not being trustworthy and not being honest about what's going on and going against the expectations of a dynamic that has been set. And this is really hard because it's like you shattered the person's reality of what they had thought of who you were or who they were in your life. There's also family and childhood triggers, like I said earlier. And also a big, big one that I like to do with my individual clients is the unhealthy boundaries. These unhealthy boundaries make us struggle a lot in the long run. And when you think about the idea of codependency in a narcissistic relationship, these unhealthy boundaries are very present. And after the fact is when we start to realize, oh, I could have set a boundary here, or I could have set a limit here, or they overstepped my limit and they crossed my boundary, things like that. We need to have a better understanding of what a boundary is and how to set a good one so that your people do not cross them. The presence of trust. This one is really helpful too, because if you haven't had a trustworthy relationship, how do we know what that looks like? How do we know what that feels like? Right? So you feel safe and respected physically and emotionally. You listen to one another when you communicate your needs and your feelings. You do not hide things and have a healthy sense of boundaries. You and your partner reciprocate trust and helping behaviors to build a trustful environment. And so this one is a really nice one because it has to be an intention of the two people in the relationship, or an intention of the organization, or an intention of yourself. I am choosing to trust this person because I'm trying to build a healthy and trustful environment here. And that in itself will give you enough push to start making the decisions and actions that lead you to where you want to go within an environment of trust. So if you get a chance to sit with that idea, where is there a lack of trust in your wellness? And where's there a presence of trust within the areas of your life? And with who? Okay. So I think this would be a really helpful thing for us to hear, which is, how do you define trust versus distrust? So Charles Feltman, he's a researcher who really focused on organizational psychology and things like that and workplace dynamics. But he was noticing the idea of trust was a huge thing showing up in people's lives. And he came up with these really nice definitions that I love to share with you all. But trust is defined as choosing to risk making something you value vulnerable to another person's actions. That's right. Something you value vulnerable to another person's actions. Which is like your good stuff, right, guys? This is your life. This is really the parts of you that you want to hold dear and you don't want people to hurt, or you don't want people to block or get in the way of. You put that into someone else's hands and you say, all right, I'm going to see if you can do it, right? Distrust is finding out that what is important to me is not safe with this person in this situation or in any situation. And this one is really powerful because usually people feel like trust is all encompassing. Since I can't trust you to show up for me when I ask of you, I can't trust that you are going to believe my boundaries when I set them. And I'm not going to trust you that you can actually be dependable in my life. And so when we think about trust, it's so much easier to break someone's trust because we think of it all as nothing, all or nothing. However, when we step out of the picture and we look at it all completely, trust is always changing. Sometimes you trust someone more. For example, I trust my best friend with a lot of the things I have, but I would not trust her to fly a plane with me in it because she's not a pilot, right? That's something I really need to consider in that perspective. What am I aware of that could also give me more space to make my expectation sustainable, right? To make it doable, that the person can actually meet it. And if they don't meet it, what does that mean for me? Does that mean I get to decide I'm not sticking around anymore? Does it mean that I want to give them the more space to learn, or is there another approach to our dynamic of trust? So these are some really nice definitions to help keep in your back pocket as you start to see, can I trust this space? Can I not trust this space? Can I trust this person? Can I not trust them? There's lots of spaces that we need to start questioning. Okay, perfect timing, our mindfulness break, guys. So let's get relatable. So, how can you tell the difference between healthy people and unhealthy people? I think this is a really funny question, mainly because this is a great way to identify ways of growth, right? So health and wellness and quality of life are all a huge component as to how someone is viewing their perspective of the world. And whether or not their values align with their behaviors and their morals also play a huge role in whether or not they can hold space for another person. So think about yourself. Do you identify as a healthy individual mentally, psychologically, within relationships? Or are you feeling as if you're in a space of being unhealthy? Like you're not supporting your body in the ways that it needs to, or the people you surround yourself do not support you in a way that is healthy. And these are another ways for you to start breaking down these dynamics of your life that trust is a huge component of.
I think it'd be great if people tell us kind of, if they feel like they're a healthy person or an unhealthy person in the chat. And if they have questions about those characteristics, go ahead and it's not too late. Go ahead and put them in the chat box. Let us know. We can always save it for a question at the end.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and keep moving. Is that all right with you? Awesome. Okay. So now let's get this trust framework going. So now that you've got this information, you know about individual trust, you know about relational trust, we know what these definitions mean. What do we do? How do we start to make this happen? So we need to begin to trust with courage. So courage is bravery, right? Those moments when you just throw off that cloak of fear and say, I'm going to step into this with my full feeling self because I got this. I got this. I'm going to try and make it happen. So we need to start to trust the framework of trust. Okay, so courage. I like to make this little acronym so we can keep in mind these words that we're using. So there is a C for care and compassion. I like this for trying to regain someone's trust, is to know that you need to have an increase of care and compassion already for the person and the situation and the environment that's going on here. We need to care about it. We need to own it. If you've done something, you need to apologize for it because injustice is just a lot of anger and rage, which doesn't lead us to a lot of resolution. So apologizing and gaining clarity gives you a better step as to where do I need to approach this shift? Where can I make my differences now so that I'm not continuing to cross your boundaries or crossing or hurting our creation of trust here? U is understand intention, impact, and feeling. We need to understand what's going on. What was the intention of the person? What was the impact? Were they intending to be selfish? And was the impact fully selfish, right? Or was their intention to be kind and they ended up being hurtful? So these things help us really think about what's going on and how did that make the other person feel? This is good data collection. R is reliability of your words, actions, and limitations. So, reliability of your words. Can you really trust what you say and what you do? Do they align? And if they don't, a great way to check that is to really take like a journal to record what's happening in your dynamics. And also being aware of your limitations. Are you agreeing to things that could potentially lead you to breaking trust with other people? I say this a lot with leaders I work with. As a CEO and a and a leader, there's a lot of things that we want to do and want to run. However, knowing that you have limits allow you to not overcommit or stretch yourself in ways that are harmful to other people. And an example of this is not following up when something is crossed, or, for example, Saying that you're going to show up to someone's game or to a party and you don't show. And you also don't reach out and say, hey, I won't be there and I'm not sure what time or whatever is going to happen. This is a very similar example of knowing I don't have the space to give other people my respect if I'm not respecting my own boundaries. Right? So knowing about yourself, what do I need in this time? A, ask for help in amending the dynamic relationship. So, if you guys are like me, I don't like asking for help. I'm someone who's like super independent. I get things done, right? Uh, but asking for help gives people a great way to see that, okay, you are trusting me with something, with your experience of the world, and I'm going to do my best to make this a safe experience, a safe space. So when you want someone's perspective on how to create a safe space for them or a trusting environment, ask them for their help. What is your perspective? What role can I play here? G, grounding and gaining inner clarity. And so I love this one because I'm someone who does a lot of meditative work, is that grounding and gaining inner clarity allows us to step back from our full feeling selves, right? It's right in front of our face. So we're immediately triggered. We have feelings, we have stuff, emotions coming up, but we don't know what that is. A great way to start gaining inner clarity is to get grounded. So what I like to do is take 3 deep breaths, reconnect to my breath because that is a constant in my life, or go for a walk because I know the stepping on the ground, my heel and my foot all being connected to the ground is all a wonderful way that to recognize that I'm here in the present moment. And this will allow you to, okay, to recognize that I've taken my time to see what's happening now. What would I like to do? What was really happening here? And then the E is establish needs or boundaries moving forward. So similar, the more you know about yourself and what you need in order to feel trust within yourself, it's much easier to tell people what you don't play with, what you're not all right with, what you don't expect or what you do expect within the relationship. So that's having the courage. And if you need that support, it's wonderful to have like a group of people around you, like a circle to really say, hey, you can do this. You're not alone. It's going to be scary, but you have the skills because you've probably done this before in your life. You just weren't aware of it. All right. And another fun one I wanted to do because really wanted you guys to think about the circle perspective of we're all really connected in this environment. So trusting is a really wonderful thing we can do to build a more belonging and connected space. So to establish trust is within the circle. So yet again, care and compassion, intention, integrity, and impact. Know who you are, walk what you walk, say what you say, and believe in your truth. Reliability of words and actions. Make sure you are aligning in the things that you're saying and you're doing so that you can feel consistent as long as you can. Confidentiality, commitment, and competence. So these 3 C's are huge of circles. As a facilitator, confidentiality is a huge part of what I do. We need to make sure that what we say in this group is going to stay safe. Same thing with a two-way friendship, a relationship, a workspace. What you say in this dynamic is able to stay safe here. And I don't feel like it will be thrown to the wolves right after I walk away here. We need to be committed to sustaining this dynamic of trust. Don't stop. It's not easy, but the more you practice it, the easier it is for you to know, okay, this is what I align with. Oh no, my body is shifting. Maybe I'm going against what my perspectives are or my morals. And competence, which is you need to know about what you're trying to do in order to do it properly. And so do the research, gain more information, collect the data that you need to collect so that you can make good decisions. Or decisions that are rooted in your best interest. Limitations to trustworthiness. So knowing you're limited again, knowing that you cannot trust everyone in all encompassing. Trust is not equal to a total of some or a sum. Trust is a bunch of very small shared experiences that happen over time. And whether or not you are paying attention, you're gathering that information, your body is taking it in. And it's letting you know whether or not you want to trust or not trust this person. And this is the intuition we were talking about earlier. It's that gut feeling. E is to establish needs or boundaries moving forward. As always, connect with what you need, be aware of what that looks like, and do your best to allow the people around you to also know that so they can keep you accountable and also keep you safe within your own means. And S is shared and sincere standards. So, like we said earlier, there is no reciprocation of trust if it's not sincerely shared. If I don't know that I'm supposed to be trusting you and you don't know I'm supposed to be trusting you, or we both decided one thing and we're not really following it, it doesn't help us stay committed to what we've intended to do. And so these are sincere standards that are genuine. I want you to stay true to them, true to your core, true to your being of who you are and the relationships that you want to have moving forward. So this is what it's like to establish trust, and the other one was what it was like to regain trust after it's been broken. Okay, so I got another mindfulness break because we said a lot there. So let's get relatable. What are the ingredients of a healthy relationship? And trusting within safe groups and safe dynamics. Do you have a healthy social support to help you really practice trust? Or are the people around you the ones that you don't trust?
It is so interesting that this is coming up. I am seeing so many comments in the chat box kind of leaning towards the topic of boundaries, and really trust and boundaries go hand in hand when we're talking about healthy relationships. Something that always comes up in my support groups or my circles, and really that I'm seeing in the chat box too, is how do we make decisions when people are, we're in a relationship with someone, maybe we're separated, and maybe they want to come back. Sheila is bringing up this exact situation in the chat box, but I'm also seeing, some other things from other people who are mentioning things like, what if somebody wants to take advantage of my vulnerability? Because you brought that up a little bit ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, how does that integrate with these topics, Sarafina?
Mm-hmm. So that sounds, I love the what ifs. The what ifs is all the anxiety that we have as humans, and it's normal, right? It is normal to be afraid. It is normal to not want your your vulnerability to be in pain. It's normal to not want to have people hurt you. That is the human experience. However, when you're stepping into a dynamic of trust, that is a part of the unconditional positive regard. Because I trust myself to make good decisions. And if you're a part of that, that means I chose wisely. However, if it is going against who I am and it ends up being that you broke my trust, is it a reflection of you or a reflection of them? Is what you should be asking. And if it feels like it's a reflection of you, let's explore. Were you setting your boundaries? Were you being fully authentic and in full feeling of what was going on for you? Or were you allowing someone else to make you small or choose the dynamic of what trust was going to be in your relationship? And these are all great questions that allow you to see what your role was. Because the first step, yet again, is you, right? The trust starts within yourself. Before you can trust anyone else, you have to believe that you can make good decisions to trust people. And it takes time. And again, it's a data collection. Do their words line up with what they're doing? How long have I been invested in this dynamic? What season is it? What time is it? All of these are a huge part of how we see whether or not someone is going to be consistent in their patterns of trust or inconsistent. I hope that answered your questions. Okay, guys. So this part, I wanted you guys to get a better picture of what we were saying about the dimensions of trust, right? So we can have trust in finances, we can have trust in relationships, we can have trust in career, physical, spiritual, environmental, emotional, intellectual. So really sitting with the question, what parts of your wellness are you not trusting? Are you not trusting your relational because you're making really difficult spaces to trust people? Are you uncertain of what your role is and feeling as if you don't have much control in the environment? So having the control make it easier. These are a lot of things that allow you to see whether or not You are meeting your goals in this specific dynamic. And then you also, once you start to get a perspective of your viewpoint, where are you not trusting other people? And so it's easy to not allow people to trust you when you continue to block off their ability to show you that they can trust you. And that's what I like to call self-sabotage. And self-sabotage is no fun because then you're missing out on the good stuff of what it means to really be in a trusting relationship. It feels good because someone has your back and you feel grounded. And what's even better is you always have you to return to. So even if they aren't able to meet your expectations, you give yourself enough grace to know that you can try this again. Like I said earlier, we fail and learn, or we learn and grow. Okay? All right, then. And so take a few moments. How does trust show up in your culture? And I like to say this because we all come from really different places, and our cultures are all very unique to their true being. Being from Ghana, I know that trust is a huge thing in our culture, and it's really important for us to know that our family is a huge part of the people we want to keep close knit. But what if your family is the part that you are having difficulty trusting with? What if they're the ones that cause you heartache? How are you going to start to approach their version of trust if it doesn't align with your value of trust? Another one is what emotions or feelings does your culture surround the idea of trust? Do they make it hard for you to be vulnerable and share what's going on for you, or do they make you feel shameful or guilty for how you view trust? And really questioning what values does your culture also personify? What does it look like to be a part of your culture? What does it look like to have high values and high regards to your boundaries and your needs? Okay, so we're right here at the end of our time together, guys. And I wanted to give you guys this beautiful quote by Walter Anderson. We're never so vulnerable than when we trust someone. But paradoxically, if we cannot trust, neither can we find love or joy. Walter Anderson. All right. So thank you guys. My name is Sarafina Arthur-Williams yet again, and I am a circle facilitator. This is Carrie here too. She's a circle facilitator. She's wonderful. And we would love if you guys would share any questions you may have with us or any thoughts you may have about what it means to take this next step. But if you need me or anything, you know where to find me. And I will definitely be here to answer anything that you've got. Okay, so thank you guys.
Well, I went ahead and I posted an offer. So you guys should all see it on your screen. And it actually prompted a really great question about what people can experience in our circles. So, Serafina, if you want to take a stab at this, then I'll go ahead and read it off. I know people need support, and I'm really nervous to talk about my struggles with strangers. How can I know that it's a safe space for me and, to be honest, not be judged? And I think this is right up the trust alley. So I'm going to throw it your way.
Yeah, absolutely. How do I know this is a safe place for me and so that I won't be judged? So what would be a safe dynamic? Right? So what exactly is a safe space for you specifically? Is it where you are able to speak your voice? Is it where people listen to you? Is it where you feel like you are seen and valued? Is it where you don't have to try too hard to just be yourself? And these dynamics are felt. So really tapping into the emotional experience. One of my favorite books right now is Permission to Feel by Mark Brackett, and he talks about all of the different emotions humans have. And the vastness of it is that we don't really know them. We know a couple of them. So we don't even know what maybe we may be feeling in a group when it's showing up, which is really important for us to even indicate whether or not we feel safe in that group. So really sit and explore what shows up for me when I'm in a dynamic. Is my intuition telling me to walk away? Is my intuition telling me that it's okay to stay here? Or is this a past experience that I am now using as a block because I am afraid to allow someone to be open with me and to trust them?
Thank you so much. So that Circles offer should be on your screen. And also, I'm going to go ahead and put a link to book a call with one of our support specialists in your chat box. So you can go ahead and schedule a time to find out more about Circles with our specialist. But unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. I just want to take a moment. Thanks, Sarafina. She shared so much great information about trust and really finding that trust after heartbreak. And thank you all for attending and participating. I hope you're all leaving here kind of feeling a little bit better, just knowing that you're not alone, and knowing that we are here for you at Circle, and that you've officially taken your first step in the healing journey. And it's amazing to kind of take one step at a time and knowing that you have options for your second step too. And your second step, when in joining a circle, you'll have a group of people who know exactly what you're going through and are going to support you every step of the way. So with that being said, go ahead and use the code support30 to get 30% off of your circles for 3 months. And you'll receive an email shortly with all the details on how to join and how to take that next step as well. And you'll no longer have to deal with your heartache alone. So thank you all again for joining, and we will see you soon.